Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Ross, and welcome to my Xbox Series X accessibility review as promised. Now, a quick disclaimer before I start, these are my impressions, no one else's, and this is also my perspective from being completely blind. So there are some accessibility features that I may not notice, that I'm not particularly used to, but I like to think that I did a pretty in-depth review of this Xbox. All right, so we're gonna jump right into the review, and the first thing I'm gonna touch on is the controller. I know I talked about this a lot in the unboxing, but just a few more things that I've noticed while playing with this controller. I really love the D-pad. It is very simple for me to execute commands in fighting games because of the tactile or the raised edges of the D-pad. This is something that Sam, my girlfriend who has one hand, has also found very useful, saying that it's easier for her to press the D-pad because of the raised corners. I also really love the addition of the new share button because double tapping the Xbox button to take a screenshot or screen recording is actually very difficult, even for me, because the button is pretty squishy. So I can only imagine how difficult it is for other people who have motor impairments. And the final thing I really like about the controller is simply that it's USB-C. And this is really important for a lot of people, including myself, because I don't have to worry about knowing which way is right side up, because that's something I always forget. Now, with USB-C, I can just put it in the port without having to know which way is right. Now for the entire review video, I'm also going to list cons of each part of the Xbox that I talk about. So for the controller, the two things I don't like are the Xbox button itself and the fact that there are removable batteries. With removable batteries, people with motor impairments are going to have a more difficult time swapping out batteries frequently. But on the flip side, it is technically, according to Microsoft, better for the environment and less waste of batteries. And the other thing I want to note is that I'm not a huge fan of the Xbox button itself. I still find it to be very squishy, and I've noticed that it's actually gotten stuck a few times, and I don't think there'd be any dust in there considering that it's brand new. Now the truth of the matter is that the Xbox Series X is new while the Narrator isn't. So Narrator has been around since the Xbox One and therefore has been receiving incremental updates throughout the years. With that being said, the only two pros I have to mention are A, that Narrator is much snappier on the Xbox Series X. On the Xbox One, Narrator will constantly buffer and lag, so I'm glad to see that the Series X has helped a little bit out with that. And the other great thing about Narrator is the accessible clip editor on Xbox. Now this was here on the Xbox One, but I feel like it functions even better on the Series X. And something like this is very important for me, especially for me. With all the social media and YouTube I do, being able to take a screenshot and being able to take a video and accessibly edit that or trim it on the Xbox is very useful. Furthermore, even uploading it to Twitter and adding hashtags, all of that is accessible, something that I find very appreciated. Now, unfortunately, there are a lot more cons to list with Narrator, and they go as follows. The first one being that Narrator is just overall really buggy. The best example I could give is navigating through the menus and having Narrator get lost and eventually reporting the wrong things in the wrong columns. I've tried to replicate it and I've had it happen to me multiple times, but I can't figure out how to replicate it. So if you guys are having this issue as well, please let me know down in the comments. Something else I noticed is that Narrator doesn't always read notifications. I'm not sure if this is invite notifications, install complete notifications, or some other kind, but I'll notice that sometimes I'm in games and I'll hear the Xbox sound and I don't hear Narrator speak anything. So I'm not sure what that's about. And the last thing I'm not a huge fan of is that Xbox has its avatars that many people use to customize their characters and how they appear online. Well, Narrator reads through all of those, but all it reads is avatar. So for example, right here, we have the avatar screen. And as I scroll through, you'll notice that all it says is avatar.
32 of 83.
And see, the problem with this is that the whole Xbox experience, part of it is being able to customize your avatar. And so the fact that I can't do that independently means that I'm being excluded from a part of the Xbox. The last con I want to mention about Narrator is that it still ducks the audio of other applications, which is something I'm not a fan of at all. So for example, sometimes I'll be in a game and I'll get an invite from someone and it'll duck the audio of the game I'm in, and then I'll end up dying or something. So it actually really prohibits me from playing my game sometimes, and sometimes I prefer to have it off while I'm in a game for that very reason. Now, putting Narrator behind us, let's move on to Game Pass. And I'm happy to say that Game Pass is 100% accessible. It was on the Xbox One and it still is on the Series X. I would consider Game Pass an accessibility feature of its own because it's really important to be able to download games and test if they're accessible without having to go out and buy the entire game. And that's another accessibility feature, affordability. You can get so many good games for only $5 a month. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, or is it $10? The reason why I don't know is because I use Game Pass Ultimate, so I can use it for my PC PC and my Xbox. That's how useful it is for me. Now moving on to media apps, it would probably be best to say that the majority of them are not accessible, unfortunately. The only two that are accessible I have found is the brand new Apple TV, which I have on the screen right now. The Apple TV app is no surprise, honestly, that it's accessible because it's made by Apple. Really, the app is laid out really well, and I'm going to show you guys how I use it right now.
Movies, tab 2 of 7, selected. TV shows, kids, library, search, tab 6 of 7, selected.
So I'm using the left and right arrow keys to do that, and then if I go up and down, it'll go into the selected tab.
Library, tab, to see your purchases, sign in, button, 1 of 1.
See?
Library, kids, tab, TV shows, the Oprah conversation, Barack Obama. Watch for TV
It's
shows,
very,
tab,
very
3 of 7.
accessible. Up next, and unfortunately last, we have Disney Plus. And Disney Plus, again, is entirely accessible with Narrator. Now, I can't show you the entire app because I don't have a Disney Plus membership, but I have in the past, and I have tested it in the past, and it is 100% accessible. Something I find very telling is that Disney and Apple, the companies with these very strong design philosophies, are the one to implement accessibility, while Netflix, Hulu, CBS All Access, like those apps don't have any accessibility. So I feel like that's really, really telling to the commitment of Apple and Disney versus these other companies. And finally, let's just talk about miscellaneous accessibility features that I found throughout using the console that don't particularly fit into a particular category. The first thing being 3D menu sounds. I really appreciate something like this because this is something I also have on my Windows computer, and it doesn't really help much with accessibility other than it helps give a visual idea of where UI elements are on the screen because it plays a sound where it is in the stereo field. So if you listen carefully, hopefully you can hear Narrator talking over it and you could hear it with headphones on, but here we go.
My games and app, recent Apple's Game Pass, Xbox Avatar.
See, it's in the left ear now.
Game, search, guide, search, game, note, game, app, this, my,
It's just a nice little feature to have. The next is being able to easily keep track of my achievements. This is something I appreciate because I love keeping track of achievements, and while this was on Xbox One, this is something I still really need to highlight because a lot of people say that gaming on PC can be more accessible with the use of OCR, but one thing I find a pain to do with Steam is just keep track of achievements, and it's just really easy to do on Xbox over Steam. So right here we have the ease of access settings, and I'm going to quickly show you all of them, but while I was browsing through all of them, I found a really cool feature. So here are all the ease of access categories.
Narrator, magnifier,
Narrator, magnifier, closed captioning,
contrast,
high contrast,
controller, 5 of 7.
controller,
Game transcription,
game transcription,
audio, 7 of 7.
and audio. If you go into game transcription, you'll have these three options: speak to text, text to speech,
Text-to-speech voice,
and
Microsoft
text to
Edge,
speech
combo
voice.
class, choose a voice to
This allows chat to be read out loud to you for blind people, but also for chat to be printed out loud or printed on screen for deaf people to see. And the coolest part yet, I haven't seen anyone talk about this, is that you can pick which voice you want it to read out loud between Microsoft David. Well, I don't remember the other voices, but the point is that I think that's a really cool feature to have because it gives some customization for even accessibility users. And the last pro I want to say are just simply the speeds overall, from the boot times to loading games. All of that is extremely useful for accessibility, especially loading games. And the reason is because if I'm learning a new game and I need to figure out which menus are what, I'm going to make mistakes. And so being able to quickly back in and out of menus or set game sessions or even games in general is really nice for just quickly learning to see if a game is accessible or not. Moving on to the cons, the first one being the UI for Xbox is just a mess. I'm sorry. I love Xbox, I love Microsoft, but first off, the UI is the exact same as the Xbox One, which is fine. That's good for people who just like similar UIs. It makes it easier for people to read. But as I go through these menus, listen how long it takes for Narrator to actually tell me the information I want to hear.
Navigation, my games and apps, button. Press the
Not so
one button to
bad.
search. Content block, store block, block 1 of 3. Store, button. Launch section, section 1 of 2. Press the 1 button to search. Game Pass block, block 2 of 3. Game Pass, button. Launch section.
See how it goes Game Pass block 2 or 3, and then Game Pass. It's incredibly redundant, and I wish that could be changed, because otherwise, keep listening.
Suggested apps block, block 3 of 3. Groups, button. Launch section, section 1 of 2. Content section, section 2 of 2. Sea of Thieves, add, see all suggestions, button.
I just wish it wouldn't read each category before what you are actually on. That severely inhibits me trying to quickly get to something in a menu because I have to listen to which category I'm in first. And And the last thing I really don't like, and this isn't even an issue for me, but it's something I noticed when going through the ease of access settings, is that if you go to audio, the only option they have for audio is just mono output. And I wish there was a slider to determine, 70% in the left ear and 30% in the right ear. This is something that I've seen done on iOS devices or just all Apple devices that I feel really needs to be brought over to gaming, because there are some people who have hearing loss in only one ear or significant hearing loss in only one ear. And they can still take advantage of stereo sound if they have it boosted enough in one ear instead of just having everything mono. I'm not deaf or anything, but I feel like this is something that could have been thought of before releasing the Xbox. And that just about wraps it up for this review of the Xbox Series X. Overall, I do still love this console. I think it's a great console, but Xbox has a lot more competition with the PS5 now. I have not used a PS5 yet, and I don't know when I will. But when I do, I'm sure that it will definitely give Xbox a run for their money as far as Narrator and other accessibility features like that. But with that being said, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. If you have enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like, subscribe, or comment down below. If you do want to support the channel in any way, feel free to become a YouTube member, a Patreon member, or a subscriber on my Twitch channel. Lastly, if you want to buy any merch, feel free to check out my Teespring merch down below.